our agenda for this first video is to talk about adult learner needs and then planning professional development sessions. So our two learning targets, I can compare and contrast the needs of children learners and adult learners, and then I can discuss what to keep in mind when planning a professional development session. I really enjoy this part. This is one of my favorite parts of being a literacy coach. So let's get into adult learner needs. I want you to stop and reflect. Think about, what do you need in order to learn effectively? You can go ahead and pause if you want to really brainstorm, but think about all of the things that you specifically need to be able to truly learn new content. Once you've given that some thought, it's important to really realize that adults clearly, obviously, are not children, right? Adults aren't empty vessels. And not that that's necessarily a theory or a philosophy that we want to hold about children, but adults differ so greatly from children. If we take a look at this chart, we can make some comparisons. Like, for example, children really do rely on others to decide what's important to be learned, right? That's the whole role of the teacher. Teachers create lessons and units around curriculum and standards, whereas adults decide for themselves what's important to be learned. You as an adult know what's important to you to be learned. That's not something that you necessarily want dictated to you. Children generally, especially younger children, accept information at face value. They rarely question very much, whereas adults, they need to validate the information, either based on their beliefs or experience. They need to show that what they're learning is true. Children expect what they're learning to be useful because, again, it kind of goes along with taking things at face value. But they're useful in the future, whereas adults expect it to be useful immediately. They want to learn and use this new information right away. This I'm not sure I totally agree with, but the theory is that children have little or no experience upon which to draw. That idea of children being clean slates, I wouldn't necessarily say children are clean slates. They do have background experiences, but they're limited, obviously, as compared to an adult. Adults have much more experience that they draw upon, but sometimes that can lead to fixed viewpoints or even a fixed mindset. So that's important to recognize. And then children have little ability to serve as a resource, like a knowledge resource, to the teacher or classmates, whereas adults so significantly can contribute knowledge to fellow people in an audience or even the trainer because of all of the experience they have. So clearly you can see a big difference between what children bring to the table around learning and then what adults bring to the table around learning. So when adults engage in learning, these are kind of questions that run through adults' minds. So they're important to pay attention to when you're thinking about how to address their needs. First and foremost, adults always want to know what's in it for me. They want to have some kind of stake. It has to be meaningful. Otherwise, it's just not worth the time and attention. So that's really important. They need to know, what is in it for me? The second, how is this going to help me achieve my goals? That's relevance. Adults need to know what they're learning is relevant and how it's going to help them in some way, shape, or form. How does this relate to me? Adults need to be able to make connections, very clear connections between new learning and their lives, their setting, their classroom if they're teachers. So they need to see a really clear connection between the new learning and themselves. When can I try this out? Again, adults want to be able, there's a sense of immediacy. Adults want to be able to go and use the information right away. So they need to not only be given the tools to be able to do that, but clearly see how they can do that. This may not be a question, but I am not a child. There's nothing worse than sitting in some kind of professional development session being talked to like you're a child, right? So it's really important to recognize, I mean, obviously we know we're not dealing with children, but it's important in our speech and our mannerisms, how we plan, that we're not delivering information in a way that we would necessarily to children. What was that you said? Adults like to question, but not for the purpose of argumentation, but more along the lines of having a little bit more time to process or to clarify, make that meaning immediately, whereas children don't necessarily do that on their own or do it right away. And then they ask, am I doing okay? Adults like feedback. If adults are learning something new in some kind of workshop and they're given time to try, they want feedback from the trainer to see, am I doing this correctly? Because if not, they want to fix it. That's a kind of a staple around adult learner needs. So adults really do value things differently than children do. There are some overlaps, but the things that adults value, I feel like, way much more heavily or much differently than for kids. So for example, adults truly value active learning. I'm pretty sure none of you think that sitting in a workshop, just listening to a lecture all day long is really effective for you. You want to be engaged. You want to be actively learning. So that's a very important thing that adults value. The second is effective presentations. Have you ever sat through a presentation that you felt like, oh my goodness, this is being delivered in the worst way possible. The PowerPoint is terrible. They should have used manipulatives or materials. Your presentations have to truly be effective. Time management is really important too. Because adults, we have limited time and we're very aware of our time. So we want any time we spend maximized. So time management is so critical in delivering professional development. Clearly communicated expectations. This really does go for kids too, but adults need to learn right off the bat what is being expected of them. What are they going to learn? What are they going to do? So that way they know exactly what to expect and what it is you expect of them. Timely sharing of resources. Again, if you've ever sat in a professional development and not been given resources, just heard a lot of stuff and ideas, but not given anything, that's not helpful. I know I find that very frustrating. So sharing resources in a timely manner, meaning right there in the moment when you're learning something specific, that's really effective. And then finally, being approachable and encouraging. Anytime you're presenting new information to adults, it's so important to be approachable so that they feel comfortable enough to ask questions. They feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable to learn new information, but then also to encourage them along the way. Because remember, again, adults need feedback as they're learning to make sure they're on the right track, and they need an encouraging person to be able to do that. So really the only exception to any of these is modeling. Remember, we said, adults don't want to be treated like children. However, adults really do appreciate modeling, especially when they're being taught a new instructional strategy or even a new curriculum or intervention materials. So it's okay to model for adult learners. If you're modeling a lesson, what's important is just to say, tell them ahead of time what audience they're emulating. So you might say, okay, I'm going to show you this new guided reading technique. You're going to pretend you're a group of second graders because that's going to help them focus in on how to participate in that process. But they'll also be able to wear both the student and the teacher hat, and they want to do that. Then, before you even start, clearly communicate the purpose for modeling. It sounds really obvious, right? But you want to be really clear with those adults. Okay, I'm going to model this new strategy for you today, so that way you can go ahead and try it with your students in your intervention groups tomorrow. It's all about purpose. So after you do the modeling, it's important to then include time for reflection. Teachers need to, or adults need to be able to reflect on how do they feel as the student, because they're going to be thinking about their students, engaging in that process. And then what is their reaction as a teacher? How do they see themselves being able to replicate what it is that you just modeled? All right, so let's continue here thinking about adult learner needs. It all boils down to is really two things. First, making the learning meaningful for adults and valuing participants and what they bring to the table. Teachers need to see, or adults need to see, what they're learning is important, and then what they bring to the table. You do value the knowledge that they bring. You're not teaching them new things as if they know nothing. So it's really important to know your audience. So let's think about planning professional development sessions. Ultimately, what you want participants to do is walk away from you with new knowledge, as well as the drive to implement their new learning. This is important. It's not just that we're teaching teachers new things. We want them to want to learn or want to implement them. Otherwise, it's just kind of a waste of time, right? So when you're thinking about sessions to plan, obviously the topic has to be timely and relevant to the audience in front of you, and timely in terms of current initiatives, current resources available, things like that. You want to make sure tools to implement new learning are given, because otherwise, what are participants walking away with? They might have knowledge, but they won't really have that drive because they won't have the tools to implement. You want to help teachers make connections so that they can implement the new learning immediately. So anytime during a professional development session, you can help teachers connect what are you doing right now, what are the tools you're using right now, to whatever the new thing is. That's going to help them have a plan in their head immediately so that they know they can go right to their classroom and do what it is that you just taught them to do the next day. And I think it's important, but sometimes forgotten, we need to let teachers have ways to get support later on if needed. This is so important, especially around new strategies, new technology resources. One of the worst things you can do is provide, say, a one-day workshop on, using Google Classroom. And then, teachers might have some great ideas, but then they go to their classrooms and then they'll think like, oh, I wish, I can't remember how he or she did that in the session. Or, well, I think I want to do it this way, but I'm not quite sure. It's so important to have checkbacks, and not just one time. And that doesn't even always mean a follow-up PD session, but that is helpful too. But that's where follow-up coaching is so valuable. People need to know how to get a hold of you if they have questions, or if they want further help, or if they want to deepen their understanding. Otherwise, that new learning just isn't going to have the depth that you really want it to have. So as you're planning PD sessions, it's really important to keep in mind the values of adult learners, right? So first and foremost, do your homework. You want to make sure that what you're presenting is current, because if it's not, your audience is immediately going to catch on to that and disengage. They might even be unpleasant, to be honest, but you want to make sure that what you're doing is needed and is current. You definitely want to emphasize the applicability of information, because remember, adults need to see that connection. What is in this for me? How am I going to use this? So it's important to not just share that, but really emphasize that in your presenting. Remember, adults value active learning, so it's important to keep them actively involved. If you're doing a full day workshop, you need to definitely make sure that there are plenty of opportunities for new learning and then going to try it out, and then new learning and then going to try it out. You want to definitely encourage participants to share information and ideas with each other, because remember, they want to feel valued, that what they bring to the table is important. So let participants share what they already do or what they already may think. Remember, again, adults really want to know how they're doing, so you have to get and give feedback throughout a PD session. That is so important. Sometimes that is hard to do, but sometimes, especially in a larger group, their peers can do that. It doesn't necessarily have to be you, the presenter. They can give each other feedback, particularly if you share something new and then you have them try it out in a small group. Let them give each other feedback. Adults need opportunities to practice what is learned. Remember, again, they need to see how it connects to what they do. So any kind of practice you can give right during that PD session is really valuable and would be very well received. And it's important for you as the presenter to use a variety of instructional strategies. We want teachers to use best practice all the time with their students, right? So it's important that you as a presenter do it with your adult participants as well. So let's think back to the learning targets. The first, I can compare and contrast the needs of children learners and adult learners. I hope you do really see, obviously we know big picture how children and adults are different, but hopefully you've really come to understand how what they value is so different and how that really should impact how you plan PD. And then I can discuss what to keep in mind when planning a professional development session. all of those things adults value, all of those needs adults have are just so important to have in mind as you're planning a session. So hopefully you kind of internalized that at this. Okay, so let's think about using technology and social media for professional development. Let's think about what is a huge issue in the field today. Well, it's time, right? Time and subs. We are we're in a very significant sub shortage. So it's really hard for teachers to get out of their classrooms for a day or even half a day to attend PD. So more and more online PD is being offered because of that. Therefore, it is less time out of the classroom. No sub is needed. Teachers can fit it into their schedule whenever they have time. They might choose to do it in little bits over planning times or lunch. They might choose to do it at night or on the weekend. And in doing so, that way, there are so many more choices and topics because it's really time is unlimited. So many more opportunities for professional development really emerge when they're done online. And in terms of online or using technology, there are so many different formats that are being offered. Some PD sessions are completely online, whether it's in the district and they use something like Moodle or Schoology or whatever their platform is. Some are hybrid, where you meet face-to-face for part of it and online for another part. A lot of times the initial workshop is face-to-face and then the follow-up or the rest is online. There might be a one-time online workshop, or there might be a series of online workshops over a period of time. Follow-up coaching is a huge component of professional development, but that can be done online via like chat boards or even just email, or I've seen social media being used for that. And then, of course, there are different places in district PD opportunities. Whatever BOCES your district falls in offers PD opportunities. And then there are plenty of other outside resources, whether they're from like state or national organizations or, independent consultants. There are just kind of an unlimited opportunity out there for professional development. And when you infuse technology, it makes it even more infinite. We also want to think about, too, it's not just about convenience for participants, but integrating technology. We're kind of trying to do the same thing in our K-12 classrooms. We're trying with students to use technology to help them learn how to best communicate, right, in their writing. We're using technology to enhance our instruction. More and more resources are being offered online. We're using it to create active engagement. I'm sure, especially in districts that have gone one-to-one, you see great active engagement with technology. Technology helps us reach a wider variety of learning styles, right? We can see that with kids in our classrooms. And it fosters collaboration. That's such an important skill for students to develop. So if these are all things we're trying to do with our students, why wouldn't we want to mirror the same thing in our professional development, right? Makes sense. So obviously, you all are future instructional coaches. So in thinking about, well, what can you do right now? Because there's not maybe anything you can do right this second in terms of PD, but you can do some preparation. I think preparing for down the road is not only going to help you in your teaching right now, but it's going to help you eventually interview as an instructional coach, but be a really effective coach. So something you can do now, start attending webinars. If you don't do that now, I'd suggest doing it so that way you kind of have that experience of online learning and you understand the format of a webinar. I would suggest attending a local online PD to see how it's done around here. Lots of districts around here do use Moodle as a platform. But Schoology is becoming more and more popular, so why not attend one and see how it's done? And then engage in Twitter ed chats for PD purposes. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. Now, in terms of what to focus on right now, I think it's really important because you're all still such new novice teachers. It's important to consistently, professionally develop yourself. That's something that teachers should do across their entire career. But given where you all are in your career, this is a great time to be doing that. So think about what are current topics and trends right now. Like, for example, social emotional learning is a huge initiative right now. Culturally responsive teaching, another huge movement right now. So seek out opportunities to develop yourself around things like that. It's also important to focus on where to go to find current information. Sometimes we get so used to just being told, like, here's the book of PD we're, offering this year. Well, that's fine, but it's also important to look elsewhere. So Twitter and social media are definitely going to help you with that, which I'll talk more about. And that whole process of online PD, if in the future you're going to be a coach and you might be tapped to lead online PD, it's important to know how to participate in it. So by engaging in it now, you'll really kind of internalize what the process should look like. And then learn how to use technology to deliver PD, again, to eventually deliver it yourself. You can do that in a variety of ways. Again, either by attending it or even attending PD around delivering quality PD. There are just so many opportunities for you right now. All right, so let's talk specifically about Twitter for educators. I will tell you my personal story. Twitter is a social networking platform, and when I first really paid any attention to Twitter, I thought, whatever, it is all about the Kardashians posting what they ate for breakfast. I don't care. And yep, that does exist on Twitter, but that's not all that exists on Twitter. And in fact, there is a huge population of professional people on Twitter that use it for professional purposes. So what Twitter really can help you do is build a network of colleagues. Now, those colleagues can be teachers teachers in the area, but it can also be researchers, big names in the field. Twitter kind of helps you expand who you consider a colleague. It doesn't have to be someone close to you, and it does in proximity, and it doesn't even have to be somebody you know personally. You have such an opportunity through Twitter to really create a very large network of who you consider a colleague. There's a lot of power in that. So what Twitter really is like a virtual water cooler. So it's a place that you can go to share ideas that you have or share resources that you have, or vice versa. Look for ideas, look for resources. You can get feedback. You can share what you've been doing and ask for feedback from other people. You can collaborate in a myriad of ways. You can actually do some really good action research. You can go right on Twitter and type in a question like, if you're looking into, like, say, how people feel about a particular program, go on there. What is everybody's perception on, I don't know, say Read 180? All the responses back, that's action research. So there's a lot of power in that too. And ultimately what it is literally 24/7 free PD. Anything you might want to learn or professionally develop yourself, you can probably go and find it in some way, shape, or form on Twitter. So I love using it for that way. So let's think about using Twitter to grow your PLN. That's your professional learning network. So what that is your network of colleagues, your professional colleagues that you want to learn from and with. So I want you to think now, who would you want in your PLN? Whether it's people you know in real life, big names in the field, people you wish you knew, it doesn't matter. I want you to pause the video and jot down who exactly you would want in your PLN. So now that hopefully you've got a list there, at least a list started, we're going to talk about how to actually use Twitter to grow your PLN. So what you're going to want to do is register for a free account. It is free. It's important to be mindful of your handle. Your handle is at whatever your name is. Obviously, at Awesome Teacher is not very professional. So sorry about that. Let's keep going on here. So hopefully, you have thought about a handle for your own Twitter account. So once you figure that out, you're going to also, when you start your account, write a brief statement about yourself and your profile. It's very brief. You just want to think about how do you want to represent yourself professionally. Some people write really funny things. Some people keep it simple, but you just want to think about how you portray yourself. So let me show you mine really quick. When I here's mine. So here's my handle at Dr. Chris Driss. Pretty boring, I know. But let me get to my page here so you can see this is what I chose to write. Again, some people put just what their job title is. Some people list a whole lot of stuff. Some people make it really funny. However you want to portray yourself. This is what people are going to see when they choose whether or not to follow you. So you just kind of want to be mindful of that. So, okay. So back to Twitter. So you can, pause now if you want to get yours started, or you can do that at the end. It's okay. But once you've got it set up, once you've got your account going, the place to start is just to follow. Follow anybody that you feel like should be in your PLN. So remember, you just brainstormed who you wanted in your PLN. Well, go find all those people on Twitter. A lot of professionals are on Twitter, so just take a look. If they're not, that's okay, but poke around, see who you can follow. You can follow either people or hashtags. I'll talk about hashtags in a minute, but start with people. As you start following people, read what they share. Obviously, they share things that they feel are important, so read it. And then as you read it, share it. What's really gonna help you grow your network is contributing. Now, right at the beginning, you might not feel comfortable sharing information. I didn't necessarily at first. Really, all I did at first is just retweet. Anything that somebody in my network tweeted that I felt was important, I just retweeted. And what that helped me do is build my own network, because it helped people find me and then start following me, and then I could follow them. But that's really how you kind of get it going. Now, you might be asking who else to follow, because there really are so many people. Well, here are just a few ideas for you. Obviously, follow me, and I promise I'll follow you right back. Follow the Roberts Teacher Ed page. I actually manage that, but you want to follow that too. There's a college page just at Roberts Wesleyan. You want to probably follow that as well. But then there's some people that I feel like these are people that I started following and helped me grow my network. Tom Whitby, he's the founder of EdChat, which I'm going to talk to you about in a minute. Eric Scheninger, he is a principal, but he's a Google certified teacher, so he shares a lot around Google, which any school or district that uses Google, it's very helpful. Justin Tart is a principal, but he really knows how to use social media as a learning tool, so he posts a lot about that. Jerry Blumengarten, he posts a lot about a lot. He's a member of the EdChat team, but he really has a lot to share. Steven Anderson, he's all about ed tech, social media, lots of technology posts from him. Jim Burke, hopefully that is the name that you know, but he posts a lot about Common Core. Sue Gorman, she is all about education apps and Google tools. So again, if you're in a district that uses the Google Suite for education, or if you've gone one-to-one and you're looking for ideas around apps, she's a great one to follow. Kylene Beers, I hope that's a name that you know, a big literacy person. I think it's helpful to follow the state education department. So as new things come out, you'll see them immediately. The commissioner herself posts quite a bit. But then it also helps you to share that quickly with your network as well. ILA, the International Literacy Association, obviously you're becoming literacy specialist, so that's someone you should follow. And I don't know why I didn't think to put here the state affiliation, New York State Reading Association, NYSRA, that's one to follow. And then our local Rochester Area Literacy Council. Those are two others you're going to want to follow as well in terms of literacy. Kelly Gallagher, another big name in literacy, especially around adolescent literacy. Fountas and Pinnell, why wouldn't you want to follow them, right? Chris Lehman, he's written a lot of books. Falling in Love with Close Reading is one of the ones I really love. Big literacy person. He's been posting a lot of personal and political things lately, but he still has so many great things to share, especially resources from his books. So he's great to follow. John Hattie, I hope that's a name that you know. All of the push around his research and visible learning, that's a big deal these days, so he's a great one to follow. Dave Burgess is the author of Teach Like a Pirate. That's a pretty popular book. He posts a lot of really great resources and strategies. Ernest Morrell, another big name in literacy. He actually presented here in the area this past school year through Ralph. He's all about critical literacy and urban youth. So he's a great one to follow. And I don't know if you've heard the name Christopher Albrecht. He's a Brockport teacher, but he's actually the New York State Teacher of the Year this year. He's fantastic, so inspirational. He's just amazing. He didn't win for nothing. But I heard him speak at the NYSERDA conference this past year. He is just amazing. He actually came to when we did the Bowman Symposium on campus and spoke there too. He's fantastic, great person. So I know I just named a lot of people, but in the grand scheme of things, if you just start your professional learning network with these names, you're going to get great information. But let me just, before I go on, show you too what I did when I wasn't quite sure who to follow. Was I would follow people that who I was following followed. Did I just make any sense at all? As I was building my network, I would look at the people that I'm following. Let me pick somebody good. Brene Brown, she's fantastic. TED Talk speaker. I would go to her and see, well, who is she following? I think she's important. Wow, she's following a lot of people. But then I might go to her and see who are all the people that she gets information from. And then I might find people here that I would want to follow. This is where people see that little blurb you write about yourself. So read them. And if something kind of piques your interest, follow that person. Why wouldn't you? That's another great way to just find more people to include in your professional learning network. See how easy it is to establish this huge network of colleagues that you don't even know in real life? I just think that's so cool. All right, so that's following people. Now let's talk about hashtags and EdChat. So a hashtag, which if you use social media, I'm sure is not unfamiliar to you, it's just a way to categorize tweets. So it makes searching for information a lot easier. You place it before a keyword or phrase. So actually, let me go back to Twitter again. And let's say I wanted to find out everything there is to know about, I don't know, let's say visible learning. I don't know why that's on my mind. So I type hashtag visible learning. Well, look at that. They're actually a place to follow. I can't believe I don't follow them. And then anybody who's tweeted anything lately with that hashtag, you'll see it. So, you know, there was obviously a conference. There's going to be a lot of stuff about this conference. Oh, look at that. I tweeted something. But then if there are articles, research that's been shared lately around it, you'll see that. Oh, look at that. A great resource there that you might want to retweet. So this is hashtags are a great tool when you're looking for something very specific to professionally develop yourself. Now, EdChats, education Twitter chats or EdChats, those are virtual meetings to discuss a particular topic. So what you do is attend a chat. They're generally an hour long. And whoever is the moderator, they post questions, and then anybody in the chat just responds to questions. They always have a hashtag, so anybody attending will see your tweet. And then if you just follow that hashtag while you're in an ed chat, it makes it a lot easier. This is not only a great way to collaborate and communicate about a topic, but it's a great way to build your PLN because you can follow people who have very similar ideas or similar passions or things that they want to learn about. I did share this link here. When you think about, well, what Twitter ed chats might be out there, there are just so many. Actually, it's a little overwhelming. Oops. So let me just show you. This is, it's updated all the time. I think, I forget, it's somebody that I follow actually who manages this, and I don't know if his name is on here anywhere, but these are all the ed chats that happen. So you can go by calendar, like, oh, here's today, what are all the ed chats going on? That's fine. But you can also go to the official list. And so if there's something you want to follow, like let's say you want to attend the Common Core Standards chat. Well, you can look to see when it happens. It happens every week on Sundays at, I think this first column, yep, Eastern Standard Time at 9 p.m. So that might be something to note. Or, let's say you really wanted to attend an English teachers chat. Let's say you were coaching English teachers and you wanted to just hear some of the things that they're talking about. Well, that happens weekly on a Monday at 7 o'clock. So this is a pretty handy tool. The other thing you can do, if you go to the calendar and look at the month, if it ever loads, you can just look like when you know you might have time, what might be going on when. So this is a pretty handy link. I suggest you bookmark it. I will say one thing though. A lot of times I want to go to an ed chat and it's at a time like that's past my bedtime, or I'm busy. I don't have that hour to sit there. That's okay. Let's say I just missed, let's say I missed the English teacher chat. That happened to have been on Monday night. So the hashtag is #IngChat. So what I can do is go to, #IngChat. And what I will see is all of the posts made the last time they had an ed chat. So you don't actually really miss it. You can go back. It's like using DVR. You can go back to it any other time you want. So that's pretty handy, I think. So you can see how, it's pretty flexible because you don't have to necessarily stick to this time frame. You can go look at some other time, but you can also see there are just so many different kinds of ed chats that you can attend. Here are some that you may feel are interesting. I think I'm interested in them. Ed chat, it's just about education. This is the English teacher one. Flip class is about, obviously, flipped classrooms. And I've attended this one before. People share amazing ideas in terms of how to flip lessons, how to flip entire classrooms, strategies, resources. It's great. NIAID chat, this is the state education chat that happens. This is every other week. This is, I feel like this is a good one to follow when things are happening. So like the Board of Regents met recently and there were a couple of policy changes. So lots of things have been released from that. So like last time it ran probably would have been a good time. But otherwise you can, like I said, go to the search bar and just type in #NIAID chat and see what people have been talking about. ELA chat, this is just about ELA instruction in general, the first and the last Tuesday of the month. EDU coach, that is purely a coaching ed chat. This is wonderful because people really talk about anything that has to do with coaching, the struggles, resources to use, how they engage in coaching cycles. I find this is great for novice coaches, but it's also great to just keep going back to for ideas. But that's a late one. That's one I never really get to attend. So I always have to go back after the fact. IRA, the International Reading Association, has one the second Thursday of every month. That's fantastic. Of course, the Common Core chat. This is one where they share, and this is national, by the way, so it's not New York State Common Core. Just resources around meeting the standards, which there's a lot of value in that. Again, you saw that calendar. There are so many other ones there for content areas, for strategies, for, you name it, populations of students, populations of teachers. So if there's something you find you want to explore, I guarantee you'll find an ed chat about it. So you can follow an ed chat right in Twitter. All you have to do is keep following that that hashtag. So if you are you're on Twitter during that time, just keep refreshing the page to find any tweets with that hashtag, and that's part of the ed chat. You can also use things like TweetDeck and Hootsuite that make following a hashtag easier. If you're a novice Twitter user, this may be overwhelming, and that's okay. But if you are not, what you can do, and if you're not familiar with TweetDeck, so I have mine set up with a couple of hashtags I always want to follow. I'm always following anything about EdTPA, because why wouldn't I? Anything about teacher ed, anything about higher ed, and then I like to follow EdChat. There's a lot of great stuff on there. So what TweetDeck does, and this constantly refreshes, anything posted with this hashtag will be here. So Obviously, I follow a couple of other ones. This isn't all of mine, but this is nice because if you just don't want to take the time to go to Twitter and type in, whatever it is that you're following, and scrolling through all of them here, sometimes it's just easier, to follow it here. It really is personal preference. This is really how I honestly never really started using TweetDeck until I really started using hashtags proficiently. So it's not something that you have to. I just thought I'd put it out there. Hootsuite's very similar.